is Dr. Helmut Marko, a nuisance for Formula One, or a communication genius for his team. Helmut Marko is one of the century-old giants of Formula One. For the last 20 years, we have seen him behind Red Bull drivers, sometimes scolding them and sometimes praising them. Throughout this process, there hasn't been a single race weekend where he didn't appear in front of the camera. His interesting statements, clashes with other team principals, and his ruthless criticism of the drivers tied to his own team certainly keep him in the spotlight. So who is this Helmut Marko? How does he manage to be so prominent despite not being a team owner or principal? He was born in 1943 in the city of Graz, Austria. There aren't many details about his childhood, but we know that he was close friends with Johann Rindt, the Formula One champion of the 1970 season. In his early teenage years, they raced against each other, first with motorcycles, and then with cars. During such a struggle, Helmut Marko had an accident with a car he had, so to speak, taken from his father. The vehicle he was using flew down from a hill. There was an agreement between Johann Rindt and Helmut Marko for such moments. If something happens to one of us and we face a problem, from that moment on, we are alone. Marko was alone from that moment on as well. Maybe he received a strong scolding from his family, or perhaps their eyes were always behind Marko. But what happened could not overshadow his interest in racing and competition. In his youth, he continued to race with local series that came his way. He was trying to be as involved with cars as he could. During this process, he did not remain idle academically. He completed his law doctorate in 1967. Today, when people see the name Dr. Helmut Marko, they might think it is an honorary title, but this is an academic achievement completed 55 years ago. His first international racing experience after his academic life was the Le Mans 24-hour races. In the 1970 Le Mans race he participated in, he finished first in his class and third overall. This was truly an important achievement, and Helmut Marko wanted to try his luck in Formula One. In 1971, Marko participated in Le Mans again, and this time he became the overall winner. In this race, Marko and his team completed 398 laps. With this victory, he set a record for a race distance of 5.335 kilometers and an average speed of 222 kilometers per hour, which would remain unbroken until 2010. Although Le Mans races are not highly valued in our country, they are a series that is greatly regarded internationally. Following these successes, his Formula One career began. He participated in the last 4 races of the 1971 season and managed to keep his seat for the next season. But during this process, he was unable to collect points. 1972 would be the last season of his career. At the French Grand Prix, a stone thrown by Emerson Fittipaldi's car hit Marko's helmet visor and permanently blinded his right eye. This situation is similar to the incident that happened to Masta in Hungary in 2009. A suspension part that flew off Barrichello's car caused Massa to suffer a head injury. After spending a few months in the hospital, he was discharged and started working in hospitality. But as we mentioned before, this man loved not only racing but also the races and the cars. After a while, he started working for Renault in Austria and led various teams in different series. He became the team principal of the famous Austrian driver Gerhard Berger during his F3 years. In fact, the relationship between Red Bull and Helmut Marko also started indirectly in this way. Marko continued to advise Gerhard Berger. In the coming years, Red Bull making Gerhard Berger the face of Marko led to the strengthening of the Helmut Marko-Red Bull relationship. In 1999, the RSM Marko F3 team was purchased as the Red Bull Junior team. Following this event, Helmut Marko began his role as an advisor at Red Bull. In 2005, he started his first managerial adventure at the Formula One level with the Red Bull project. He was now at the forefront of the young driver programs for both Red Bull and Toro Rosso teams. He has played a role in the inclusion of many talented drivers in the Red Bull ecosystem, such as Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, Daniel Kvyat, Carlos Sainz, and Max Verstappen. He acts like a shadow to the drivers he works with and never leaves them alone during any race weekend. So what exactly does Helmut Marko do at Red Bull today? At the head of the Red Bull Young Driver program, it is Marko's responsibility to find race seats for all the drivers in the academy. The career management of all these drivers, their rise from lower series, or the end of their sporting lives is in his hands. At this point, he actually has a fairly decent statistic. The drivers mentioned in Marko's tutelage have around 80 race wins in Formula One. On the other hand, there is a prevailing thought that Marko is harsh and treats drivers poorly. His sending of Daniel Kvyat from Red Bull to Toro Rosso after just 4 races in the 2016 season seems to indicate that he is not very tolerant. His methods and statements are debatable. Sometimes he says things that make one sit down and ponder over them. For example, during the pandemic, the idea of deliberately infecting Red Bull drivers and staff with coronavirus came from him. Fortunately, this idea did not come to fruition. Additionally, his aggressive and accusatory insinuations received significant criticism. So is this situation really the case? Is Marko an old man without a filter? When we change our perspective on this issue, we actually start to see different things. Whenever Helmut Marko makes a statement, he is never at the center of the issue. Protecting the drivers and the team seems to be his primary duty within the team. This way, the press never directly engages with the drivers. In other words, Marko does not allow that opportunity. In this way, the drivers can continue their lives without losing focus. We mostly see his statements rather than those of team principal Christian Horner. We experienced this better, especially during the 2021 season when Red Bull was fighting for the championship. Marko was like an unofficial spokesperson for the team. He received the most criticism during this process. Lewis Hamilton, Toto Wolff, Mercedes Engine, FIA, Michael Masi, no one was left out of the controversy during the season. Although it was a successful formula to maintain the dynamics within the team, Helmut Marko gained significant antipathy after these events. Of course, this is not just a recent event. Helmut Marko has always been like this. Since I do not know him personally, it would not be right to predict whether he is a good or bad person. Some people are likable, while others are unlikable. Marko successfully uses his verbal communication skills to divert attention to another area. To summarize more clearly, he is a good politician in the world of Formula One. It seems that this process has been working for 17 years due to Red Bull's structure. Ultimately, both possibilities mentioned in the title become true for Marko. He is a complete headache for his rivals, but a true communication and management expert for his team. Finally, let's take a look at the brief comments I left about some important Formula One drivers who have gone through Helmut Marko's tutelage. Sebastian reminds me of Niki Lauda to some extent. But Niki was much older when he joined Formula One. Although Daniel seems like one of the young and fun-loving drivers, he also has a serious side that no one knows about. Carlos is undoubtedly a great driver. Toro Rosso was almost at the same level as Max. Max has inherited some excellent traits from his father for his career. He is now a world champion and will race more comfortably than ever.